All right, good evening, members of council, administration, and those who are streaming from the comforts of home. Welcome to our regular council meeting of July 13th. And so we'll move to roll call after I call the meeting to order. And all members of council are present and accounted for. And I just want to acknowledge the fact that I'd like to report that we had a closed meeting earlier this evening, was given to the next following open meeting, being the Policies and Priorities Committee meeting at 5 p.m. So to the members, any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda is presented to you this evening. Yes, Deputy Mayor Becchetti and Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to declare on the minutes of the public council meeting of June 22nd, and also items 3 and 4 under bylaw in the agenda due to my employment as an administrator with the Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll also declare on the minutes for the June 22nd meeting. I believe we also have a report for E, same issue, PBS 2021-37, and then also the minutes as well. Or sorry, the bylaw before us tonight as well.
All right, thank you. And we'll have that duly noted. And to the rest of the members, if you find yourself in a conflict situation, just address the chair and we'll deal with that accordingly. All right, we'll move on to the minutes. We have the minutes of the regular council meeting, June 22nd, a public council meeting, June 22nd. That's the Greater Essex County District School Board, and a special council meeting of June 29th, 2021, organizational review and information technology service review. Motion on those minutes. Councilor Jobin, Councilor Tonio. On those minutes, any errors or omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, minutes are carried. I believe there's no supplementary this evening.
That's correct.
And so we'll move on right to delegation, and it gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Katie Stamler, PhD, I should say Dr. Stamler, and water quality scientist, source water protection, project manager of Essex Region Conservation Authority. And she'll be here to talk about the source water protection annual program report.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I believe Sean has a presentation he's going to pull up. So thank you for having me. I always appreciate that that your council wants me to come and talk about source water protection. So it gives me great pleasure to be here today and present this to you. So you can move to the next slide, Sean. Thank you. So every year, the Essex Region Conservation Authority, or the Source Protection Authority, is required to present an annual progress report by May 1st. And we do that using the data that we collect from all of our different implementing bodies, which is due on February 1st. So an implementing body includes the municipalities like Tecumseh. And our report covers all of our implementation cumulatively since the effective date of the Source Protection Plan up to December 31st of 2020. And we highlight any of the progress that we made in 2020. And all of the formats that we use are all given to us. The templates are all given to us by the Ministry of Environment. And this is our 4th progress report since the plan came into effect. So everything that we have to provide scores on is given either a score of progressing well, satisfactory, or limited progress. And then we provide an overall score and implementation progress on our policies, our municipal progress, risk management plans, and the provincial progress. So our overall score, I've put in every one of the slides that has a score, I've put in our 2018, 2019, and 2020 scores. And you can see that we're progressing well, and our committee thinks that we're doing a great job with our implementation. We continue to make progress on implementing our policies. Our municipalities are incorporating source protection into their business practices and working on their official plans. We're making progress on our risk management plans, and we actually have only a few outstanding that are left that didn't meet that 2020 deadline, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about those. Of note is that the harmful algal blooms continue to be an issue for our drinking water intakes, and I'll chat about that a little bit after too. And our committee is always recommending that the ministry develop at least base funding strategies for ensuring the local program is able to deliver results that are effective. And as you may have heard with the Conservation Authorities Act, that source water protection will be considered one of the core mandated programs for the Conservation Authority. So in terms of our policy implementation, we look at all of our policies together. So there's 50 policies in the source protection plan, and we look at whether they're implemented, in progress, no progress made. And you can see that year over year, we're making progress in the number of policies that are fully implemented, and most of them remain in progress. So this slide just goes through those 15 significant drinking water threat policies that are considered in progress. And most of those are risk management policies. So Laura Neufeld and I are working on making sure that these policies are fully implemented. This year, they were low risk. These policies apply to Lakeshore, Windsor, and Amherstburg IPZ1, where it's a very small land area. So we're just sort of working through a few things to make sure those are fully implemented. 2 of the policies are directed at the City of Windsor related to their combined sewer overflows. So those are still considered in progress. And then there's 1 policy that we just have an outstanding thing for Amherstburg to put into their next official plan. In terms of our municipal conformity, again, our committee feels that municipalities are doing well with this. There is an official plan conformity exercise that municipalities have to go through for source water protection. So making sure that you're incorporating source water into your official plan. And I have reviewed Tecumseh's official plan. I provided comments in September and again in April. I saw that Chad Jeffrey is here today, and he's done an excellent job of incorporating source water protection into your OP. So you guys will fall into that completed progress, completed OP, I think pretty soon. And then as well, this in 2020, I reviewed versions of Kingsville, Leamington, and Lakeshore. So everybody is kind of working towards this. And I did my first zoning bylaw review for LaSalle this year, which was interesting because I'm not a planner. So it was a good, interesting action for me to do. Our provincial policies are all going well. They developed an SOP that they put in place back in 2018 so that they're reviewing any new potential significant drinking water threats. So we feel very confident that the province is doing a good job with their prescribed instruments, and they have not identified any new significant drinking water threats in the Essex region in either 2019 or 2020. We just always like to bring up the road signs. There's no new road signs this year, but we recognize that there's always some question about maybe what these signs mean. So just always like to have the opportunity to remind as many people as I can that these signs mean that you're within a vulnerable area. So you're within an area that provides the source of drinking water to our drinking water intakes. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to put out some better communication. There's some groups provincially that are working on some communication pieces around what the signs mean. So moving into risk management services, and as a reminder, so these are policies that are implemented by the risk management official, fall under what's called Part 4 of the Clean Water Act. And they're actually the municipalities have the duty to implement those policies, but they're able to delegate that authority back to the Conservation Authority. So all of the municipalities in the Essex region delegated that authority back to IRCA to provide the risk management services on their behalf. And we do that so that it's a consistent approach across the entire region. And so that we have, one expert who's doing this work instead of having to have different people at every municipality trying to do this as part of their job. So every year we provide, as part of our report to the province, a sort of high level overview. And then we also provide to our municipalities a much more in-depth overview. So again, you can see that our SPC is pleased with the work that we're doing and has scored us as progressing well. These numbers just show you that, so when we started out, We had identified 384 potential significant drinking water threats, determined that 295 of those actually were not a potential threat because they were either below the volume threshold or the fuel tank that we were looking at was outside of the event-based area. In 2020, Laura established 42 risk management plans for a total of 97 risk management plans established overall, which is one of the highest in the province to have this many risk management plans in place. So that's 91% of our existing threats addressed. And the 9 remaining sites, and I think I flagged it somewhere else too, there are 7 cannabis operations and 2 oil pumping stations. And the cannabis operations, we raised it to the province, and we included a letter when we circulated the report that we wrote for the province outlining the various steps that we took for these cannabis operations. And it was the desire of Mayor Nelson Santos that we include that letter when we sent that out to municipalities so that other municipalities were aware of this issue of illegal cannabis operations. So the reason that we weren't able to establish the risk management plans for those sites is because we weren't able to make contact with them. And since this time, there's been a couple that have been rated by the OPP. Some of them have changed back into vegetable, and some of them we've issued orders on. So we will be establishing their risk management plan by order by the end of the summer. And then the oil pumping stations are owned by Lagasco, and Laura is working with them to get all of their risk management plans in order. So these 9 remaining properties will be taken care of in 2021. So this just summarizes the number of risk management plans that we've established since 2016 year over year. So you can see the progress that we've made there. These are for what's called existing threats, and then I'm going to talk about future threats. So those would be new builds since 2015. This just summarizes those existing threats by municipalities, and I just highlighted Tecumseh there for you. So you can see we identified 12 potential significant drinking water threats. So those would be large fuel tanks. Determined that 10 of them did not need a risk management plan. 2 of them did, and we've established those 2 risk management plans. So we have no remaining outstanding existing threats in Tecumseh. And then these are those future threats. So any new builds that are happening since 2015. And I've met with your staff, with Brad Dupy and others, to discuss that process of following the written direction where, when any planning or building applications come in, your municipal staff follow a 3-step process to determine whether or not the risk management official needs to review any of those new builds that may potentially have fuel in a vulnerable area. And I believe, I don't have it broken down by municipality, but I don't think that Laura's had to have any Section 59 applications, but we are confident. We've met with your staff, so we know that, that the process is in place and is working well. So I just wanted to touch on harmful algal blooms while I have you here. So NOAA puts out their annual prediction for the harmful algal bloom severity, and this is they put it out, I think about 2 weeks ago. They did their final prediction, and they based that on the phosphorus loading from the Maumee River. So that's based on the concentration of phosphorus in the water and the volume of water that's actually moving through the Maumee River. And it's based on the Maumee because we know that has the biggest influence on the size of the harmful algal bloom in the western basin of Lake Erie. And they have all these sophisticated models. And as a scientist, I'm always very appreciative of how humble the scientists are that work on this and how much they change their models year to year to make sure that they're working properly. So the bloom severity that they're predicting for 2021 is a severity of 3 on a 10-point scale with a likely range of 2 to 4.5. And in comparison, the 2020 bloom was also a 3, and 2019 was more of a 7. So really what this comes down to is, we can't sit back and say, okay, we've fixed the problem, because what's happening here is that we had very dry springs in both 2020 and 2021. So we didn't have as much phosphorus moving off the land and into the water and into the lake. So this is really much more driven by low water levels than it is by concentration. The concentration is still high enough that if the flow were higher, we would have a severe algal bloom. So this is not gone and done with. It's just a bit of a drier period. And then these are just some success stories that Laura's got for fuel tanks. So just some before and after of, some of the great stuff that we've seen actually come out of her approaching them and saying, you need a risk management plan. And so they're following up with what they're supposed to be doing with TSSA. So we've got some much nicer looking tanks out there on the landscape. I just want to touch on COVID-19 as with everybody else, we're working at home. We started working at home in 2020. We returned to the office for a little bit and then they sent us all home again. So we've been basically home since December of 2020 again, but it hasn't really slowed anything down. Obviously, we had to make some adjustments and things, but Laura's been able to continue establishing risk management plans very well virtually. That's it.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. So I'll
Welcome.
turn it over to council, and I know there's a report by our Public Works Department, but before we bring that forward, and that, I just want to see if there's any questions to Ms. Stambler at this time. Okay, Councilor Dowie, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Ms. Sandler, for being here tonight. I know the source protection program is pretty vital for keeping our natural resources protected. And I'm wondering if you have a crystal ball into the future as to whether there might be some adjustments needed down the road in terms of the monitoring or the participation by municipalities, or if you think we reached that point where this is we have an appropriate level of protection, and going forward, we should be in a sort of routine. Just hoping to get your take on that.
Yeah, so there is a process by which we must update our source protection plan. So it's what's referred to as Section 36 of the Clean Water Act. So we have already done a review to say, here are the things that maybe didn't work very well when we initially wrote the plan. So you're able to sort of flag things that need to be updated. There's also changes to the director technical rules that dictate how we apply the different technical work that we have. So there will be an updated source protection plan based on that new technical information and a few other things. So that's in the works. We're waiting. The province has been, they're supposed to be giving us that final version of the director technical rules. So once we have those, we can start pushing forward with some of those other changes. And in the meantime, we've done some of the other technical work, and then we'll go into a consultation period with municipalities. I don't anticipate there being much of an impact for Tecumseh, but there could be a bigger impact for some of our other municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. And to Ms. Stamler, I'm wondering now we're starting to see larger storms, more intense storms. Wondering the additional risk or influence on source water protection that these large rainfall events have, and when our system, and I think of the rain event that Michigan had, and when they're overloaded, a lot of that overflow just goes directly untreated into the lake, into our rivers. So
right.
Wondering what the added risk or impact is from the more intense storms on source water protection.
That is an excellent question. There's a tool that we're able to use to help us identify what some of those risks are, but we're not supported by the province to use that tool. So we have to come back to our municipalities to, so it would actually fall to the municipalities that have the water treatment plants to help with that. So we would be able to do a small piece of it, and then the municipalities would have to conduct the rest of that risk assessment from the risks of climate change. So it is an excellent question, and something that I hope we can answer better in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Dr. Stamler. Thank you very much for the presentation. you commented on kind of some of the models that are used for, the phosphorus issue that we're looking at, or we've kind of seen over the past few years. And this is kind of in line with Councillor Dowie indicated as well. Can we use, or is there use of these models? I mean, we know we use them to predict the future.
Mm-hmm.
Are we using them, and is there anything that the municipalities can get so that we can kind of proactively, in advance, work to ensure that we mitigate, issues of this type or any other type, on a broader scale?
Mm-hmm. So we don't have, so the watershed models that are used for that are models that are developed for the Maumee River. IRCA has, with my other, water quality scientist hat on, we're involved in some different research projects. One of them, there's two that are related to each other called On Farm and Living Lab. And they both occur in the Weigel Creek watershed. And part of that will include modeling of the Weigel Creek watershed. And so we're actually just beginning to talk with the modelers. These programs are funded through OSCIA and Agriculture Canada. So we're sort of partners in these projects where we collect the data and provide it back to the modelers. So in the coming years, we will have a local watershed model, which we haven't had before, to have that actual, and I'm not talking like watershed planning. This is like hydrological modeling, where you're looking like, how does water move and how does it move off the land, and how are nutrients processed in the watershed. And part of the work that they'll be doing is looking at different best management practice scenarios, and what are the best management practice scenarios that might work best for us here. We're also working on a regional phosphorus management strategy. That sort of took a bit of a backseat with COVID, because it should have had a lot more stakeholder engagement. So that's something else that we're working on regionally. So these are excellent, really thoughtful questions that are really in line with the work that we're working on.
Understood. And again, through your worship, to Dr. Stamler, I think the one thing that I really just want to echo, because I do a lot of modeling in my day job, and the predictive tools that exist, in the engineering fields and solid mechanics are incredible.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to predict things to the future is sometimes quite amazing. So I believe our town, we're certainly progressive. We want to do the best, and using such tools, which, at a very analytical stage aren't really too they don't cost too much.
Mm-hmm.
If we could use these tools to help us as we move to the future, and again, I know you articulated the point that this is going to be forthcoming, but I'm quite sure, that would be a good thing for everyone, and encourage it. Please, keep active on that, and I'm sure we would certainly love to hear and work with these models to help us predict the future. We know that they may need refinement and tuning, but nonetheless, we know of their benefits. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Councillor Jobin.
Sticky tonight. Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Welcome, Dr. Stamler, and thank you for your presentation and for the annual report. As well, I just want to acknowledge the commitment of your team and your expertise to the SWP. So thank you so much for all of that. As the mayor mentioned, we do have a report, so I would just like to move that forward and receive that, if I may, at this time, if there's no further questions.
Yeah, I will, but I have questions to Dr. Stamler first.
Great, I will hold.
I'll come right back to you.
Okay.
And Dr. Stamler, a lot has been made, and some of the discussions were made here today, especially on the phosphorus loading and the threat to, obviously, our drinking water. But there's another threat, and it seems to be coming to the forefront. And what is our local doing? I know this year, the Great Lakes, the mayors of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Institute are also very much interested in what we call the forever chemicals, and where there's a huge threat, because everything that we do, from the clothes we wear to fire suppression, foam agents, are chemicals that don't dissipate some of it lasts for 1,000 years.
Mhm.
And so the impact to obviously our drinking water, our food production, the fish out and so forth. What are the studies that are now being undertaken, say locally? And this is an area where you had just mentioned, and it really, I'm concerned to the fact that the province is not doing much in terms of the funding and on that particular side of it.
Mhm.
But in particular, I think that this is a national, international issue. And for the fact that 20% of the world's fresh water is right in our backyard, is there anything, in your opinion, locally that we need to be doing where now this is becoming kind of front and center?
Mhm. So you're talking about PFAS and those chemicals, right? So I think you are doing it, as with the other mayors, by talking about it and pushing for it, and that's where that change needs to come from, because PFAS is not included in the Clean Water Act as a chemical of concern. So there's none of our policies address the things that PFAS is found in. So I think that that's something the province is working on, but that's sort of in the next stages of what comes from the technical rules. So I think with that sort of a level of political pressure, I think is the right avenue for you to take at the moment. When I sit in meetings with my colleagues in the US, I hear about PFAS constantly. They are talking about it, and they are, acknowledging that they don't know what to do about it, but you don't even hear it spoken about so much here. So I think that conversation is shifting, and there is some work happening in the US. So so stay on it is what I would say.
Okay. Anything further? Then Councilor Jobin, you're prepared to move to bring the report forward,
Yes, sir.
and supported by Councilor Tonio. And I'll call upon our director, Phil Bartnick, to bring his report forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report being brought forward is report number PWES 2021-31, Source Water Protection Annual Program Report. And the recommendation before council today is for the report to be received.
Thank you. Moved by Deputy Mayor Buchetti, supported by Councilor Altenhoff, that the report be received by council. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And I also be looking for a resolution to receive the actual presentation from Dr. Stamler. Councilor Altenhoff, Councilor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. All right, I certainly on behalf of council, Dr. Stamler, I certainly want to thank and administration and thank you for the report this evening. And source water protection is, as I stated earlier, when we have the benefit of having 20% of the world's fresh water and we see what's happening around the world, this is a commodity that is extremely precious. And we need to do everything that we can to protect it, and certainly through your efforts and IRCA and are doing exactly that, setting the example. And then there's no doubt there's a responsibility to each and every one of us who live along this corridor, that we need to do our part and to protect it.
Awesome.
So thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara. Thank you, council. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good evening. Okay, communications, we'll move that on to, and we have quite a bit of communications, 28 pieces. If I could have motion to to receive? Councilor Jobin, Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Members of council, is there anything that you'd like to bring forward from the communication piece? Councilor Tonio.
I'd just like to support through you, Mr. Mayor, the implementation of a 3-digit emergency number for people that are suffering from mental issues and mental distress, things like that, suicide prevention, things like that. So a few of these letters indicate a 988 number. So
I just want to divert to the clerk. I think that's come before us before. Am I correct? And we supported it.
Okay.
And we actually put a motion forward, Councilor Tonio.
Okay. I support your previous motion then. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else, members of council? The one I would bring to your attention is, there's many in here, but it was initiated by Fort Erie in particular, and it's also Chatham County. It's the capital gains tax on primary residence, and that's the federal government. I think this is one that obviously we should be supporting, and in particular, and if we look at, you'll notice there's probably 5 or 6 of them that are here, but certainly the one municipality of Chatham Kent, our neighbors, have moved this forward. And I really believe that we need to send a message to the Minister of Finance federally that our homes are golden. And for many in retirement, that's their nest egg, and certainly should not be subject to taxes. Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. And I do certainly support that concept. I guess has the federal government said that they intend to start taxing in this manner, to your knowledge?
They are this is a preemptive opportunity for us to tell them, keep your hands off, the capital gains of our homes.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to support. Maybe we can copy our federal member as he's part of the government.
Absolutely. So support the Chatham Kent item 9. So moved by Councilor Dowie, supported by Deputy Mayor Buchetti. And we'll make sure that we add our local MPs to it. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Communications action required to K1 Essex Region Conservation Foundation on June 15th, the annual IRCA tournament. As you know, we've always supported our 2 members or designates. And so there's a motion here that the town support the Essex Conservation Authority, IRCA reps, or alternate members of council, should they be unable to attend, be authorized to attend the Essex Region Conservation Foundation 32nd Annual Golf Tournament on July 15th, subject to funding in the 2021 budget and the provisions of the town's travel and professional development policies. Councilor Tonio move, Councilor Houston support. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, move on to L1, committee minutes. We have the policies and priorities committee meeting of June 22nd. A motion to approve. Councilor Jobin move. Councilor Houston support. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. We have the Police Services Board meeting of June the 10th, a motion to receive. Councilor Tonio, Councilor Altenhoff. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Oh, sorry. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, move on to reports. First report is presented by our Chief Administrative Officer. and it's on the Town of Tecumseh Strategic Priorities at 2020 report. So I'll call upon Ms. Liza Gevins to bring that report and recommendations forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am very pleased this evening to present to Council our second annual report out on Council's strategic priorities 2019 to 2022. The document that is attached to the report outlines the accomplishments under the 5 pillars of Council's strategic priorities. As well, it has special sections that pay particular attention to the challenges faced in 2020, the twin challenges being COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the threat of inland lake flooding. So we did do a special treatment on those two. They took up a fair bit of everyone's bandwidth, as you recall, in 2020. And so felt that we needed to report out on those specifically. However, the balance of the document then details the progress that has been made in the areas of smart growth and promoting economic development, building our regional partnerships, sustainability, and housing, as well as sustainable infrastructure and the progress that we've made there. It does report out on community health and wellness and what we have done to further progress in that area, as well as continuous improvement and good governance. So we are I'm very proud of the staff and administration for their contributions, and of course, Council, through your leadership, we wouldn't have been able to achieve this without your support. So most appreciative of all of Council's support as we work through a difficult year. We highlighted some of our significant accomplishments, such as the large funding contribution through the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund for the stormwater infrastructure on Riverside Drive. But there are several other, I mean, that was a big one for sure, but there are several other very laudable and extremely benefiting accomplishments that we have documented in this Goodreads book. Very much a good news story that we will promote to the full staff body as well. But we bring it here to you this evening for your own ability to give yourselves a congratulatory moment in terms of all that's been accomplished through your leadership. So thank you.
Oh, I thought that was music to accompany the.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, the piece. There's no doubt. I mean, when you start reading through the accomplishments and everything that's been done, it's very impressive, and no doubt. And you know, we're here every 2 weeks or so, and we deal with the agenda of the moment, and but the moment is you know the previous 2 to 3 years, and when you encapsulate all of that, then you come to realize, wow, you know, out of all of the capital dollars that have been spent over the last 3 years for a community of 25,000 people, 24,000 people, it's very impressive. And certainly I want to, you know, thank administration, because at the end of the day, somebody says, what's council role and what is administration's role? And you know, obviously policy developers and then administrators and the administer what you know, the wishes of council, and you do that very well. And so I want to certainly congratulate council as well for you know, for that team effort that we put together and deliver a lot of what our constituents are asking us. Yeah, sometimes we do things and it can be popular, but it's you know, but I must you know, emphasize the fact that members of council are a real team, and they look at big picture, and big picture is how you achieve goals. And when you look at the document that that administration that you prepared, Madam CAO, it encompasses the hard work of everyone involved. And And those are deliverables. We always look at, and I'm going to use Councillor Altenhoff's most famous words, quantitative and qualitative. And realistically, that's exactly what it is. So everybody deserves a pat in the back, and certainly your team, administration, and again, members of council for your indulgence and your patience and your and your good ideas that you bring forward on a daily basis. So congrats to everybody.
Thank you. And our recommendation is simply that the document be received, please.
Perfect. And also those who do not have the opportunity to see tonight or on our email list, I want to also include all of our rank and file, from everybody in every department have played a role in the delivery of customer service. This is what it's all about. It's about customer service. So please extend on behalf of all of us, and I know all the department heads that are here and directors, pass it on to your staff, and that they might feel that it goes unnoticed, but the 7 members of council do appreciate the efforts that each and every one of them bring to the table to make sure that those are deliverables.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We certainly will, and they are acknowledged and certainly in the document. But yes, we absolutely recognize that we can't do this without the support of the devoted employees of Tecumseh, and are most appreciative of their efforts every day.
Very good. So a motion on the report, Councillor Houston and Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Move on to corporate services and our clerk. And on the town-owned vacant land on Tecumseh Road, that's corporate services 2021-15. So I'll call upon the clerk, Ms. Moy, to summarize the report and bring her recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the town was approached by a property owner on Tecumseh Road that was inquiring about purchasing the town-owned lands to the west of their property. It is shown on the map that is displayed before you in red. So it's this property was purchased by the former village of St. Clair Beach in the early 1990s with a vision that those lands could be used either as access to the Optimus Park to the north or for future facilities to complement the park. So the property owner, as I mentioned, to the west of the subject lands, expressed an interest in purchasing them. So the matter was reviewed by the town's Public Works Department, Parks and Recreation, as well as the Planning Services Department. We also looked at the sale of land policy. We also looked at other requests to purchase open green space in other situations, in particular in adjacence to green space. So after a review, the following considerations were given when arriving at the recommendation in this report. And that is that while this green space may not currently be used formally, it could be used as a valuable purpose in the future to complement the Optimus Park. If the town were to sell the land, it could be adversely affected. It could adversely affect the full optimization of the future improvements of the balance of the Optimus Park. Selling lands may create interest from other abutting property owner to the east to also purchase. And we'd be looking at potentially setting a precedent on the sale of green space. So in summary, and the recommendations of administration after reviewing this request would be it would be premature to sell these town lands at this time, and are recommending that they not be declared surplus and sold privately.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moy. On the recommendation, Deputy Mayor Bigetti and Councilor Houston. Oh, is he frozen? Are you moving the recommendation, Deputy Mayor? Oh, okay. And supported by Councilor Houston. Any questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. So through you to administration. So thank you for the history, Ms. Moy, for the acquisition of the property and its intent to connect to Optimus Park through a function. Especially with the development nearby, I think it's a good recommendation, which I will support. But I was hoping to maybe it could be elaborated on whether there was a vision from the village of St. Clair Beach for this. Was this going to be a walkway? Was it going to be a field? Is there any record of what the intent was, or was it more of just a strategic purchase back at the time?
I believe that the intent in reviewing the minutes was to complement the park, whether it be for future access, whether it be for additional parking at the time where they were experiencing some overflows onto St. Gregory's Road, or just other purposes that would benefit the park. So that's probably about all that is revealed in the minutes of the meetings.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments? On the recommendation presented by the clerk, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. All right, requests for noise bylaw exemption Sunday, July 18th at 2021 at St. Charbel Antonin Maronite Catholic Church. It's in Ward 5.
Thank you, Your
Been
Worship.
done year after year.
Yes, so this is in relation to a wedding. We did receive a request. Actually, two are on the agenda this evening. So now that the gatherings have been able to increase, I think, under the reopening, there's some interest in having some ceremonies. There will be a couple of outdoor ceremonies, and the first is with regards to an event on Sunday, July 18th. In accordance with the noise bylaw, the happy couple is just expressing an interest for relief from the noise exemption bylaw, and consistent with previous requests, administration is prepared to recommend that exemption until 11 p.m.
Just a question, Madam Clerk. Also, there's still, even at stage 3, I think that the gatherings of, is it 100?
The gatherings are limited under the reopening, and one of the recommendations is in the report is that the event be undertaken in accordance with the provisions under the Reopening Act.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that they understand that.
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions or comments on the recommendation? Moved by Councilor Tonio, Councilor Jobin, support. All in favor? Opposed, carried. And we're looking for the same on C.
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Tonio, Councilor Altenhoff. And no further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, that's carried. All right, move on. Number 3, we got fire emergency services, and it's the fire report 2021-06, the high water rescue vehicle. The day has finally come. Been waiting for this, Chief, for a long time. So bring us your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council will recall, its meeting held January 12th of this year. Council authorized a transfer of $210,000 from the Life Cycle Building Reserve to the Life Cycle Fire Apparatus Reserve for the purchase of a high water rescue vehicle, subject to the confirmation of the town's investing in infrastructure grant application. On June 29th, the province of Ontario announced that the town's application to the ICIP COVID resilience stream was approved for the full requested allotment. During that period, myself and our deputy had done some significant research into high water rescue vehicles. With the anticipated maximum flooding depth in the town at the 100-year lake level being approximately 48 inches, we needed to find a very specific vehicle. And there is one manufacturer in North America that makes a vehicle capable of operating in waters of that depth. And it's the Acela Truck Company in Montana. In accordance with the purchasing bylaw, requirement for competitive bid solicitations for goods, services, or construction may be waived under joint authority with the appropriate department head and the purchasing coordinator, where there's an absence of competition for technical or other reasons for the goods or services. My report is asking for council's consideration in allowing the purchase of the high water vehicle from the Acela Truck Company, being the only manufacturer of this type of vehicle. I am available for questions if there are any from council.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Honor. Chief, just a question with the water rescue. We've had issues with people not being able to get permits because we can't satisfy certain rescue conditions. This vehicle per se, how many inches or feet of water is it able to safely be used?
This one is actually capable of going through 50 inches, 50, which is above the maximum anticipated flooding level in the town.
So 50 inches easily takes care of 2 feet of water.
Easily. It's more than 4 feet.
4 feet.
Yeah, so that's good, because I know we've been in communication with a resident and IRCA has been involved, and 18 inches, 24 were the numbers that we're throwing out. But now with this vehicle, hopefully that process or the next step can be explored and hopefully be able to provide some hope for those residents that either want to put additions or build a new single family residential in their side yard. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Councilor Dowie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you two, I believe this might be most suitable for the planning department, but just to build on what the deputy mayor has asked, I know we have a couple of cases where IRCA is saying, well, we don't know what the town of Tecumseh's plan is. Now that the day has come, we're going to have a purchase order. Are we aware yet as to when IRCA will give that all clear? Like, okay, there's a purchase order in hand. The construction is going to take a few months. Could these not operate in parallel, or do we have a sense yet as to when IRCA will say, yes, this is suitable and it's inevitable, so let's approve it? Do we know at all?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in fact, the fine detail on that is just being resolved with IRCA. But you're quite correct. From our perspective, we can have things running in tandem. And we would look at it as something synonymous to, with draft plan approval of a subdivision, the town is granting sewage capacity to development. If a sewage plant is under construction and a tender's been released, the MOE views that as you have the ability to grant that capacity out. So we're using a similar thinking process with this. We were waiting to see, what happened this evening, but we have had discussions with IRCA that it would be our intent to follow that, because as you can appreciate, most of these are Planning Act applications. Even if they're committee of adjustment, they have time periods within which to circulate, make decisions, and then do a circulation of a decision. So we will be advocating to move forward as soon as possible once we clear up some of the, the technical issues between fire, IRCA, and ourselves as to how mechanically we'll make that work. But that's our goal, is to create that efficiency.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to Councilor Dowie's, Mr. Hillman, do you know approximately how long? Because I know my phone, I can give you about 4 voicemails here of a particular gentleman.
Yes, it's probably the same gentleman, I suspect.
Yes.
But we do have a few. I'm hoping by the end of the week, we'll have some clarity, and we'll be working with applicants who either have applications that have to go to the Committee of Adjustment or whatever the matter might be. So that's our game plan.
Thank you. All right, any further questions or comments? Then the recommendation is to order this vehicle. Councilor Houston, Councilor Jobin, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right, go shopping. All right, we'll move on to planning. planning, PBS 2021-33 CIP grant. That's a building facade and parking area grants at 11977 Tecumseh Road. That's, I believe, at the corner of Shawnee and Tecumseh Road. Councillor, wait a minute, no, I lost my screen there. Okay, Mr. Hillman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I think Sean was, he's getting used to these. It's map 1. If we go there, it will help everybody get geographically referenced here. So the southwest corner of Shawnee and Tecumseh Road is a small restaurant, now vacant, purchased by Kona Sushi Inc., who's converting it into a sushi restaurant. And the application with us this evening is under the grant program with the CIP. Thank you, Sean. If we just slide down. And it's for 2 elements of the grants that are available in our CIP program, Community Improvement Plan. One is for a parking area improvement. The report mistakenly said it was to replace an existing asphalt. It should have been an existing gravel parking lot with asphalt and line work. And the second is to introduce funding for a facade improvement. And council will recall that earlier this year in May, an application was granted to provide funding for a design study for the building. So it is proposed that all faces of the building will be refreshed and ultimately painted, and a small mural, I should say, on both sides. So with, there we go. So that is the west facing wall. Portion of the building will be black, the balance will be white. And I think if anyone's been there recently, it's a tired building, partially gray, but also just in a poor condition, I would say. And the lower image, if we just slide it up slightly, is looking from the northwest. And so that's the corner of Shawnee and Tecumseh. And we're going to come to an application about an outside area on Shawnee Road there, which is not part of this application. So 2 quotes have been provided by the owner, and we do provide funding up to $15,000 for facade improvements maximum, and up to, make sure I get this right, up to $10,000 for paving, and they have provided quotes up to the maximum caps. We provide 50%. And the recommendation to council is to support the application for grant funding. The owner will have 6 months to commence the project, after which 1 year to complete the project. This is an application similar to others that have been considered by council in the past 2 or 3 years. If there's any questions, I would be happy to.
Is there going to be a patio on the roof? Or is that just for aesthetics?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's not part of these applications, but that's something that's being considered by the owner, but it's not subject to any final discussions or approvals.
Yeah, that's really GTA-ish, the patios on top. But anyway, very attractive. If that's what they do in a facade, it's going to be very attractive. All right, any questions to Mr. Hillman? All right. On the recommendation, moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported by Councillor Altenhoff. All in favor? Was if any, that's carried. And then we'll go to B, again, planning PBS 2021-34 encroachment agreement on the same location.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, if Sean, we went to actually attachment number 2, I think that will provide the information we require to review with council. So again, same property and the property limits are outlined in red. And under the application, under the CIP and the official plan, there is policy that encourages outdoor patios to add vibrancy and destinations to our main street. The application before council this evening is for an encroachment agreement. So the edge of the Shawnee Road is actually just at the edge of the east wall of Kona Sushi. So you can see a property line label there. And so the request is to have a small patio extend into an area that is currently grassed Okay, so it would actually be concrete would be put down by the owner, and the area would be fenced in by an aluminum fence. And it has dimensions of approximately just under 12 feet width and approximately, I think, 40 feet of length, and 4 tables, 4 each, so 16 persons. And then the balance to the curb of Shawnee would remain grassed. And you may recall that where you see the words aluminum handrail, that is already a concrete platform. All the way from the wall to the curb has a very sort of urban feel to it. So there'll be a small entrance there you'll see to the patio from the north. And then at the south end, a small extension of concrete so that patrons and staff can enter the restaurant and have access to the facilities, washrooms, etc. So the application this evening is to consider approval of an encroachment agreement onto the town's property with terms established by the town solicitor, including adequate insurance, a provision clearly identifying that if the town were to need to go in to do works underground for whatever purpose, it would be the cost of the owner to bring it back to the same state as previous, i.e. put concrete back down and tables and fencing. So we're quite excited about the application. And somewhat similar, but smaller in scale to what had been proposed just on the west side, but never came to be realized. Or sorry, on the east side of Shawnee Road, but never came to be realized. So that is the recommendation to council to authorize execution of the encroachment agreement, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hillman. Pleasure, council, on the recommendation. Moved by Councilor Dowie, supported by Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried.
Your worship, I just had a question on this one.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, I think I would have voted the same way. It's more for awareness. I know across the street with the previous patio application, it runs into disrepair frequently. I guess I'm just curious as to what if any protections will exist here in the event that this business decides not to operate in the encroachment. Would it still be maintained?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, very good question. The encroachment agreement has a term that basically establishes we can ask for the removal of the patio at any time. So, we will be monitoring that. That, of course, is the final heavy-handed approach. We will be discussing with him the ability to provide some features right along that south face. Of the patio area, whether it be plantings with taller shrubbery, whatever it might be, just to create a little bit of a break in the visual component. Now, this side of the street does not have a sidewalk extending into the neighborhood like the other side did, and the other one was slightly larger and went a little bit further south. So, we think with 4 tables, we're quite hopeful it will fit into that corner. But certainly at the end of the day, if the town runs into issues, it is the town's property, and the agreement makes it clear that we have the final determination to withdraw the approval.
Okay. So that's been moved, supported, and enacted upon. And okay, next is also our planning and building services. It's a site plan control 2021-35 Kajopa Investments, and that's at 3075 Manning Road.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
We're going to have Chad just do the next 2 reports.
Okay. Mr. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Where are you? Oh, you're bouncing around here. There we go.
This report deals with a proposed site plan control agreement amending agreement that pertains to an approximate 1.1 hectare L-shaped property that, as you see on the attachment before you, is located southwest of County Road 42 and Manning Road intersection. This property, you'll know it as the Tim Hortons property. The Tim Hortons development or restaurant is located on the southern portion of the property. The balance of the property is vacant. And the reason for the amending agreement is to facilitate a second drive-through lane. We're seeing many of these second drive-through lanes with fast food restaurants, especially in highway commercial areas. And this attachment here shows the details of the proposed improvement. The additional drive-through lane is for the ordering portion of it only, after which it will merge into the existing drive-through lane for the pickup. To facilitate this, there will be some removal of existing curbing, replacement with some new curbing, a relocation of a lighting standard, and the elimination of 2 existing parking spaces. The elimination of those 2 parking spaces won't have any bearing on the ability to provide adequate parking for the site, and it meets the minimum requirement in the bylaw as well. The proponents have also submitted a stormwater management memo indicating that the runoff, the stormwater drainage will behave just as it is currently, and staff has reviewed that and is supportive of it. So the recommendation is that a bylaw authorizing the execution of the amending site plan agreement be adopted, subject to the town's subject to the following occurring before the town's execution: the owner executing the site plan control agreement and posting security for performance pursuant to paragraph 4.1 of the amending agreement. So, Mr. Mayor, that's, those are my comments, and I am happy to answer any questions if you have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. Any questions or comments on the recommendation? Council's wish. Moved by Councilor Dowie and Councilor Houston, support. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Next report is also from Planning Building Services 2021-36 zoning bylaw amendment condition of consent application BO08-21 Andrea Howard, 1441 Shawnee Road, and scheduling of a public meeting. Mr. Jeffrey, I think that one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's simply for, it's recommending the scheduling of a public meeting for a proposed rezoning. That's the condition of a consent application that was approved by the committee back in May of this year.
Okay, thank you. Move, Councilor Altenhoff, Councilor Tonio, support. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, next PBS 2021-37, the OPA ZBA 13800 and 13814 Tecumseh Road. That results from a public meeting. Final recommendations. Is this Mr. Jeffries or Mr. Hillman?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I see. You break the tie. I got you.
Yes, it certainly was something like that. So, Mr. Mayor, Council, this is a report summarizing the outcome of a public meeting that was held by Council. And Sean, if we do go to the first map, please, attachment number 1 for the site of the proposed new Greater Essex County Elementary School, just at Tecumseh Road opposite Dorset Park. Of course, the land holdings entirely owned by the school board are the area outlined in red. The area with the black dashed line around them are currently 2 residential properties, and they're designated and zoned that way in our planning documents. The balance of the property identified as 13,800 is currently designated and zoned for a school. So the school board has purchased those properties to the east. Council did hold a public meeting in accordance with the Planning Act. There were no comments received, with the exception of the Conservation Authority advising that they had no comment. So the public meeting was quite brief, quite succinct. The report summarizes from a planning perspective our rationale for supporting the applications to amend the official plan and the zoning bylaw to change the 2 residential properties and allow their use to be incorporated with the school site. Sean, if we go to the next attachment, please. And you'll see that the area that is the dark green is the area proposed for some outdoor activity space. And that would have been where the 2 residential properties currently are situated. So you can see that the proposal is to completely remove the existing uses from that site. Of course, prior to a final site design being completed, there will be a site plan approval required by the municipality, and the agreement brought forward to council for consideration and execution. We have looked through the provincial policy statement, the county OP, find that it's consistent and with PPS is conforming to the county official plan. And in summary, Mr. Mayor, have gone through the amendment procedure section of the Tecumseh official plan and find that it is in keeping with the matters for council to have regard to. I would like to make note that in terms of infrastructure, two things I think that are of interest. One is that the traffic impact study did recommend a signalized intersection that will be opposite Dorset and this new entrance. We will look to confirm, although satisfied with the findings of the traffic study, that there aren't any other offsite works that might be required, i.e. sidewalk extensions. And the second thing is that although there's water and sewage capacity, there is a storm sewer extension that detailed design has been approved by council to extend across the front and further to the east. To the pumping station. And that detailed design is underway as we speak this year with council's approval, and it's anticipated that its construction would commence next year, as it will provide an outlet for this area in addition to improving some of the storm infrastructure for the residential lands to the south. It's intended to be constructed next year in concert with the construction of the school. So the recommendation is that council amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to support the two residential properties to be used for institutional uses. And if there's any questions, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer those.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Hillman. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I would like to add this report as part of my declaration of pecuniary interest. I did put it in writing, but I forgot to mention this report to the clerk.
Okay, thank you. All right, to the members not in particular that are in interest, what is the recommendation? Councilor Dowie. Move the recommendation. Supported by Councilor Tonio. On the recommendation, any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hillman and Mr. Jeffries. All right, move on to Public Works, Environmental Services, PWES 2021-30, Tecumseh Road on-street parking, Shawnee Road to Bedell. I'll call on Mr. Martinick. Bring your report forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So I just want to go through and highlight the recommendations tonight, as well as the contents of the report. So the report before you today, it is recommended that the report be received and that council approve the implementation of on-street parking on both sides of the road along Tecumseh Road from Shawnee to Bedell, and that the expenditure of $30,000 for the implementation of on-street parking on Tecumseh Road be funded from the Road Life Cycle Reserve. So earlier this year, council ended the lease agreement with the owner at 12150 Tecumseh Road, also referred to as the cable parking lot, where the town was utilizing 27 parking spaces. So with the removal of these off-street parking spaces, administration was then requested by council to review parking options for area businesses and customers, specifically on-street on Tecumseh Road. So the report does recommend the implementation of on-street parking, and it does have regard to the following: the Tecumseh Road Community Improvement Plan and Streetscape, the 2016 Traffic Analysis Report, and the 2020 Tecumseh Road Micro Simulation, existing traffic conditions and driveway placements, parking assessments, for example, the number of available parking spots within the area. The report does touch on the municipal class environmental assessment process and has identified this undertaking as a Schedule A, which is essentially pre-approved, provided that the municipality does provide notice. We did identify that revisions will be required to the town's traffic and parking bylaw. This section of Tecumseh Road is a county connecting link where the center 7 meters, or essentially the center 2 lanes, are maintained by the County of Essex with respect to routine maintenance and winter maintenance. And we also had regard to kind of winter control and maintenance operations on the town end as well. So implementing the on-street parking would increase the available parking within the Main Street area. The existing conditions today, without the cable parking lot, we do have 62 spaces that are off-site in municipal parking lots with 5 accessible spaces. And the proposal before you today would increase that number with both on-street and off-street to a total of 126 spaces. So administration has estimated about $30,000 in order to implement the on-street parking, which would include the removal of existing pavement markings, the installation of new pavement markings, signage, as well as modifications to traffic signal timing. And if approved today, the works, we can foresee the works commencing most likely in September, once we've been able to have a contractor retained to complete the works. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartnick. All right, members of council. Councilor Tonio, Councilor Dowie. Move. Okay, thank you. Moved by Councilor Tonio. Do I have support? Councilor Dowie? Councilor Dowie, a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to Phil. Thank you for the information and the just all you provided in terms of background. I think the implementation is something that is destined to make some people very happy and others very sad or frustrated. I know the traffic congestion at the Les Bronze intersection is something that I know I hear about as the biggest fear. And, my response has consistently been, this initiative won't make things better, but it won't make them worse. The capacity at the intersection remains the effective bottleneck. It doesn't matter how many lanes across you have. If you can't put more through that intersection, you're stuck. So with that in mind, there's the mention of the traffic signal timings. Is there an awareness as to what what, if any, kind of delay would result from these changes to the motoring traffic? I mean, ultimately, I know this is our plan, we're going to do it, but I'm wondering if that figure exists as to what the delay is destined to be with the changes.
Thank you, Councillor Dowie, and through you, Your Worship. So in early 2020, there was a Tecumseh Road micro simulation completed by the town's consultant, and they looked at the Tecumseh Road corridor from essentially Lozon Parkway all the way to Brighton Road. And when they did run their simulation with the full build out, the ultimate build out and the vision of the downtown area with on-street parking, essentially, I believe from the city of Windsor limits to Bedell, they did identify an additional delay because of those works, but they were not greater than 60 seconds as part of their simulation. So they also, and as part of that simulation, they did look at the AM peak and they did look at the PM peak as well.
Okay, thank you. Through your worship, supplementary.
So go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So I just hoping you can clarify on one point and elaborate on another. One, just on that, that's a total 60-second delay or 60 seconds per cycle? That's my first question. Second is, can you elaborate on the active transportation improvements that would result from this conversion?
Thank you, Councillor Dowie, through you, Your Worship. So the 60 seconds would be if a person was traveling on Tecumseh Road from Lozon Parkway to Brighton Road. So that's the impact that would occur if this on-street parking and road narrowing would commence. Regarding active transportation, another good question. As part of the transportation master plan and the active transportation plan, we did identify on the Main Street area a kind of a larger single lane width that would accommodate on-street, not on-street bike lanes, but kind of a sharrows or a shared lane. The platform was not wide enough when we initially started looking at the Main Street and the streetscape project. The platform was not wide enough to accommodate 2 lanes of traffic, 2 parking lanes, as well as on-street bike lanes as well. So if this were to move forward, we would be looking at implementing not only the on-street parking, but it would provide that extra width for the cyclists on Tecumseh Road itself. And in addition to that, you know, as council is aware, we are currently working on the Via Rail L'Esperance Road improvements at the grade crossing there as well. And as part of those improvements, we are looking at a slight widening to also accommodate that wider lane width, which could help facilitate cyclists on road. So part of the larger vision for the active transportation, and we're slowly putting the puzzle pieces together here.
Thank you.
Antonio.
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor. When this CIP was proposed, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago when I was with the OPP, Mr. Hillman could attest, I wasn't too keen on it. You know, I was worried about the traffic and putting all this parking here. But as I see our goal to make this a community, not an area just to drive by, an area to stop and shop and visit, now I can see this as the businesses are coming in. A few questions on the parking spots to fill. Will they be colored or the curb colored to identify the spot, or it's just going to be a signage and markings, obviously?
Thank you, Councillor Tonio. We will be posting signage, but we are looking at also doing some pavement markings themselves. Maybe not the entire kind of painting of the parking spot or shading, but more of kind of an outline, what you might typically see in a more downtown area of where these parking spots would be located.
So if I was driving around down the road, I would be able to identify that as a spot, is my concern.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. And then obviously we're going to do a media, let everybody know this change is happening. So we're traveling motorists that, you know, eventually there's going to be cars parked on Tecumseh Road. I'm sure that's happening. Left turn lane. So obviously there's going to be no left turn lane. So if a guy is traveling east or westbound and needs to turn left and has to wait to make that movement, he will be stopping traffic for a bit, correct? If there's a parked car on the right.
Shouldn't be.
So through you, your worship, and Sean, perhaps if you can pull up, I believe it's attachment number 2. So as part of the plans, there would be the left turn lanes at Tecumseh and L'Esperance would be maintained. And we would also establish left turn lanes at Shawnee Road as well to help facilitate traffic movement in that area. So I don't believe there's left turn lanes on Tecumseh at Shawnee currently, and that's where kind of the further review of the traffic signalation comes into play. You know, can we alter the signal timing accordingly? You know, do we have to swap out a traffic signal head with one that has a dedicated left turn? So those are some more of the details as we kind of move forward with the project if it's approved.
Thank you. And my concern, sorry, follow up was more the people waiting to turn into a business, not on a controlled intersection. You know what I'm saying? So if I was traveling down the middle of Tecumseh Road between Poisson and Shawnee, St. Anne's, and I wanted to turn left and I couldn't because of traffic, I would be technically holding up traffic with my waiting for that left turn, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Which is just one of the not deficiencies, one of the downfalls of it. But overall, I believe once everything is finalized and completed, I think it'll be a beautiful community. Thank you very much.
Phil, on that as well, another intersection that and many folks have come to us, and now with all of the Skyline development and also the Valente development too, is there any way of at least changing that light to have at least an advanced green for left-hand turns on that area as well?
Thank you, Your Worship. That is definitely something we can look into. I know it has been brought up in council before, and it's definitely on our radar as development proceeds and these apartment complexes and condos do start to get filled with residents. And it is part of the I guess the ultimate plan as well to kind of extend that on-street parking all the way down the Southfield and have dedicated left turn lanes out Southfield as well, right? So that's something we're definitely going to keep our eye on and see if we can do something in the short term and even in the intermediate term as development progresses in that area.
Okay, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is a great opportunity for us to take that, first step and implement the traffic without redoing the entire road and having our residents, experience it and have the ability to park on the street. My only question, and I was always, in support and, been along in the process all the way. But for our residents who may have some concerns, for me, I really enjoyed that the video which actually showed the movements. So I don't know if we can post that, online or have it available for viewing. But for me, I thought that was really cool to actually see the impact and see the traffic's movements after we implemented the on-street parking, the before and after. So I think if we have that available, it was a really cool illustration of the way that the road will move traffic after this is implemented. So I'm in support, looking forward to seeing it, put into play and taking that first step. So thank you.
Councilor Alton.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, on the point that Councilor Houston just raised, we have some model predictions on how traffic will flow. The next step that we're looking at right now is really implementing, I'll say a quasi implementation of the CIP situation. So this will provide data to validate those models. And I would suggest we look carefully as to how things progress, how things turn out with this, if this moves forward. If it can help as a validation tool, that certainly can be used to give our residents, our community, kind of a better understanding and a good feeling for how these models can predict, the future. I would also hope the fact that we do implement it, physically, if that actually happens, that we'll use this information or this opportunity to see if we do have any issues or other things which perhaps the model did not take into consideration. And hopefully, as we move forward, if there's other things that have to change or adjust, we'll adapt accordingly. So just I guess more of a comment, if anything, to administration. This is really a good opportunity to kind of assist with that model validation process, but also help us to kind of look at this carefully and see, are we moving, I think the models have shown we're moving in the right direction. Validation will provide it, hopefully, but also an ability or opportunity to tune the system to make sure it runs as best it could be. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything further? The only thing I would add is, I certainly take all of those comments. I think they're well placed. This is kind of the beginning, and I think to acclimatize our residents. If you're going to drive right through, then that's why the expressway is there and so forth. But a little bit of history before amalgamation. I remember, I think it was in 1996, maybe 97, in a courtyard in Sumed, Namibia, sitting there with Brian Hillman. And we had this discussion back then about, because at the time we were running out of land to develop our community. And we had developed a strategic plan to intensification on Tecumseh Road, more commercial and more retail and service industries in that area. And part of it was on the streetscaping and allowing more walkability and opportunities. So it's not a new concept. It's something that's been on the minds for a long time. And now with the CIP and the transitioning to intensify that area, and we've got to really make this a destination point. And when you look at communities like Kingsville or Leamington or Amherstburg, when you look at their main roads when they're coming into the core of their communities, that's exactly what they have: on-street parking, walkability. Those are great attraction. And if you talk to people in those communities, what's attractive to them is exactly that. And so I think what this is kind of the beginning, and it's to slow things down a little bit so that people can benefit. When you look at, even tonight, we just passed, the little at Shawnee, the sushi place, a patio outside. Across the street, we got 360 with a patio. You got Frank next to it with a patio. You've got development that's going to be occurring right across from that. So you can see the hub that's being built there. And I think this is precisely what we need, is an introduction to what the final streetscaping is going to be. And I think the establishment of the parking there, I think, is going to do that. And it's an opportunity for us to see how this thing evolves. So I think it's a great plan that's being put forward, and it's another migration to the end product that we've put a lot of work in, and now it's getting closer and closer to fruition. So on the report, the recommendation, council's wish, moved by Councilor Tonio, supported by Councilor Dowie. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right, I believe now it's also Public Works and Environmental Services 2021-32, the Rail Safety Improvement Program. Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report before you today does have three recommendations. It is recommended that the bylaw be prepared to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement for the Rail Safety Improvement Program. And that is related to the contribution received for 2021-2022 intake for the improvements to the Via Rail L'Esperance Road grade crossing. Second recommendation is that the expenditures of $215,000 for the updated project scope related to property and easement acquisitions be approved and funded from the Road Lifecycle Reserve. And thirdly, that the expenditures of $200,000 for the updated project scope related to the enhanced streetscape along the west side of L'Esperance Road from Via Rail to First Street be approved and funded from the Road Lifecycle Reserve. So in summation of the report, so in July of 2020, the town applied to the Rail Safety Improvement Program, the 2021-2022 intake for the improvements at the Via Rail L'Esperance Road grade crossing. In March earlier this year, Transport Canada advised the town of its approval for funding under the program, and the Government of Canada's investment towards the town project will be 80% of the eligible costs, up to a maximum of $1,027,200. So the agreement has been reviewed by both administration and the town solicitor, and the bylaw regarding this agreement is on the agenda tonight for council's consideration. Bylaw 2021-53. So more recently, with the detailed design being initiated, we did identify 2 items that would be an update in project scope and would require council approval. And we wanted to highlight those as part of this report. The first being property and easement requirements. They have been identified as being required from 12270 Tecumseh Road. That would be the northwest corner of Tecumseh and Lesbronce. As our review of the property information depicts an overlap of portions of private property onto the existing sidewalks and roadway. So it's not only a housekeeping issue that we have to address, but there is additional lands and easements that are required. So further discussions will be held with the property owner, and appraisals on the required property will be completed and reported back to council at a later date. The second issue, and Sean, if you could perhaps pull up attachment number 2. I believe it's the map of the site. So we did identify an opportunity for some enhanced streetscaping. And that would be along the west side of Lesbronce Road from Via Rail to First Street. Oh, there we go. So the figure before you on the screen, so the red hatching is the limits of the Via Rail Lesbronce Road grade crossing limits. And then the green hatch is the area that we have identified, and you can see there's some overlap there in front of the building. We've identified an area of perhaps some enhanced streetscaping. So the enhancements would consist of decorative street lighting with provisions for future Wi-Fi and power outlets, decorative pavements, landscaping, trees, streetscape features such as benches, as well as underground conduits for future utilities. So these enhancements would be in keeping with the proposed works already proposed for this segment as detailed in the Tecumseh Road Main Street streetscaping project. And this provides an opportunity, it has a benefit of showcasing the proposed features of the broader streetscaping project in a condensed area. And it could give a good sense of how transformative the improvements on a larger scale could be. Sean, if I could get you to turn to page 4 of the report. Oh, yep, there we go. Would be, yeah, the financial implication section there. Oh, there we go. So the chart on page 4 does identify that we currently have just shy of about 1.6 million allocated for this project. However, with the Rail Safety Improvement Program funding, the town's costs are reduced to a total of $569,600. So with the inclusion of the updated scope related to the property and easements, as well as the enhanced streetscape, the town's cost would increase to $984,600. And with that, that is the end of my presentation. And I want to thank you again.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Varnick. Questions or comments? All right, on the recommendation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Becchetti, supported by Councillor Jobin. On the project, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried unanimous. And that's really the kickstart of our streetscaping. Wonderful. Okay. D, basically looking for a PWES 2021-33 LaChange Drain, appointment of a drainage engineer. So call upon the director to summarize the report and certainly a recommendation, but I think this is basically calling just for the engineer. Council? Moved by Counselor Dowie, Counselor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you, Ms. Bartnick. All right, let's move on to bylaws, and I'll call upon our clerk, Ms. Moy.
Thank you, Mayor. The first bylaw we have on the agenda this evening is bylaw number 2021-41. This is a bylaw to provide for the provisional approval of the reconsidered drainage report on the reassessment of the Sear drain and extension. We also have bylaw number 53, which authorizes the signing of an agreement with the federal government with regards to the rail safety improvement program as reported on earlier this evening. Next, we have bylaw number 54, which is the bylaw to approve the official plan amendment in respect of the school board's application, as also earlier reported on this evening. And bylaw number 55, which is the zoning amendment in relation to the proposed new school as reported on earlier this evening. We're respectfully asking for first and second readings of all of these bylaws and third and final reading of only bylaws 53, 54, and 55.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. 2 readings. Moved by Counselor Dowie, Counselor Altenhoff. 2 readings, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. 3 readings. Counselor Dowie and Counselor Tonio. I know your arms are getting heavy, guys, but all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any unfinished business? None identified. Any new business? Counselor Tonio, Counselor Altenhoff, and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for administration through police. The police station next door has 2 administrative assistants, and one has retired as of December 2020. So just wondering if they're going to be replacing that position, or is there a rebate for the town? Things like that. I don't know if they still offer that, but I do know we have had a complement of 2 secretarial staff next door at the OPP station, and now it's been 1 since December. So just wondering if they're going to be replacing the position or a rebate in part. I don't know. So wonder if we could look into that.
I'll defer that to Madam CAO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Tonio. We don't know what their plans are. That would be considered something operational and not necessarily within our control. Well, not within our control. As far as a rebate goes, I'm pretty sure the answer to that is that, you know, the billing is based on calls for service, and how they calculate that is very formulaic and does not pay for specific staff positions, whether they're uniformed or non-uniformed. I can certainly put the question to the staff sergeant or the Inspector Miller and see what the response is. But you know, I suspect that it won't have any impact on the town's bottom line.
Thank you.
Just hope that
I can appreciate that part, that there won't be any rebates or anything like that. Just wondering, you know, are we still paying for the same function and getting less service, basically? So yes, I would like an answer of, you know, what they intend to do with that position. Thank you.
I think, you know, the town's always prided itself on customer service. Is it going to affect a lot of work that they, you know, that we're, you know, a lot of research, people going in, you know, will it be a timely response in our residents' requests? I think that's something I'd like to get an answer as well. Who else? Who's next with their hand up? Councillor Altenhoff and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, to Council Administration, I received correspondence from one of our residents who has some experience with the CCTV security cameras. And I know a number of years ago, I presented or kind of challenged administration to look at opportunities for those devices to kind of better help with, you know, just securing our community. I've been forwarded an email, and I'll send it out to council as well as the CAO, maybe as well as to Mr. Firth. Again, just to maybe look at some opportunities that have come up from the province of Ontario for such equipment, and just for consideration, and if there's opportunities for the town to capitalize based upon some of the things that have happened over the past few years that we've seen. Some of the vandalism that occurred. This may be an opportunity for us. If it leads to nothing, then we did some research and we showed that it was nothing. But if it leads to something that could benefit the town and make it more secure, that certainly would be worthwhile. So I'll forward that email off, and please appreciate the administration's review and consideration of it. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Firth.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Altenhoff. Yeah, you brought that up a couple of years ago, and we have, I guess it's a good time and opportunity to update council on that. We have had some wins on some closed circuit cameras in locations where internet and power weren't available. We were able to secure some cameras that operate in those environments where we have had some vandalism issues. So the high quality images rendered from the events at those locations assisted the OPP with their investigation. But to your point, if there are extra grant or more grant opportunities in that regard, we're more than happy to entertain expanding that system that we've already tried to experiment with and deploy. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we'll do some follow-up.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Bichetti.
Thank you, Mayor. With tonight's report regarding the parking on street on the main street, and also with the via rail enhancement improvements there, maybe if we could have our BIA reps bring to the BIA board a proposal in terms of special projects, if they're willing to work with the town and look at, maybe installing some planters, large planters along the main street would go well with dressing up the parking spots for those that are parking. And also maybe if the town can look at, removing those old newspaper stands in the municipal parking lot, if we can do the work while we're doing it in conjunction in the next 6 months, come this fall, you'll see, a fresh look. And I know, planters are going to be the thing, for the spring, but if they could have that discussion and present it at the BIA board to say, look, this is a good opportunity to jump in now with the town while they're doing these works.
Councillor Dowie and Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to acknowledge. I know one of the residents of Ward 1 had asked about some queries about Dillon Drive being addressed, and I know those questions are being addressed. So I just wanted to mention that as part of the meeting, that the response is in development. Following up on the deputy mayor's comments about the Business Improvement Association, I know certainly it's been a trying time in the business community, and certainly the CIP, and seeing it come to fruition is really an exciting thing to watch. I mean, who would have thought a couple of years ago that we'd be seeing this level of investment in our downtown, and so many said, why bother? It'll never change. Well, it is changing before our eyes, and certainly changing for the better. And so it's really happy to take with Councillor Houston take that comment back regarding the opportunity for beautification and for working with the BIA. So we'll bring it up at the next meeting and have that dialogue.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. And further to Councillor Dowie's comments, we'll certainly bring that back as the deputy mayor has inquired. One thing, we can let you know, and I think the timing on it is, is going to work out well, is the BIA is working now on 2 possible murals in the downtown core. And one of them is actually right across the road on the AMLO's built on the AMLO's Pizza building. It would be, just coming over the tracks they're visible on the south side of the building. And the other spot that they were looking at is the old billiards or the law office. It would be the north facing wall of the BIA parquet. So two murals right there in the core, but I think the improvements, with the rail in the streetscape on the west side will marry up very nicely. But those are two potential projects that they are doing to spruce up downtown right now. So we'll find out, and at our next meeting, we can bring an update of where those are going. But I do believe they were slated to happen this year. So we'll bring that back, and then we'll also update council on when those projects are going to be completed.
Okay, anything further in new business? The only thing I would add, Madam CAO, is as you know, this Friday, we are going to stage 3. So a little bit more freedom for our business community, and that is good news. And as our numbers continue to grow, and I think we're over 60% now, second doses, and we're almost at the numbers where basically we're beyond stage 3. So what I'm asking is that as we move into the fall, into September, start thinking about in meetings within our chamber now that that's completed. And if we can start putting a plan together to start bringing that to reality.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's on our next council admin agenda as an item. So thank you for raising it.
Okay, and that's it for me. Hopefully it stops raining. Okay, no more new business motion. We have a motion, mobile food vendors. This motion was brought forward by Councillor Dowie. And so I'll relinquish the floor to you, Mr. Councillor Dowie.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Members of Town Council, I bring this forward as we had a very entrepreneurial resident who wanted to add an amenity to the neighborhood, but it may not have been the best spot for it. So just in discussing with staff, we thought, okay, well, maybe there's real opportunity here to have a win-win. So those who are entrepreneurial, who would like to set up shop in some key public places, might have a mechanism or a means of permission to do that. And so the motion I want to bring forward is that the administration undertake the research to look at how we can accommodate mobile food vendors who could be placed at the places where we'd like them to be, and make a good return, but also provide a service similar to our arena concession. I know a lot of people do want that, but also people at Lakewood Park, Lake Cost Park, McCall Park, sometimes they just want a snack. They might want an ice cream or a pop or something. So this might be an avenue to helping us achieve that good balance. So anyway, that's the substance of the motion, and happy to entertain any questions or comments, but certainly I'm looking for a seconder as well.
All right, thank you very much. Seconder on that, Councillor Altenhoff. Just a question, Councillor Dowie. I mean, you'd be looking at, well, what we should be looking at is what you're contemplating, like food trucks or anything like that. That could be at the parks or.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really I don't really have a bias as to what the model is. I mean, the issue that had come up was just a cart.
Yes,
but,
I remember that.
But having said that, I know you go to a winery or a venue like that where they have a food truck. I know it's a very appealing amenity. So I certainly wouldn't want our research to be limiting to just the smaller ones. I'd love for the trucks to be looked at too.
Well, that's great because I would have asked to see if we could just maybe spread it a little bit more, expand it. So no, that's good. So you want this brought to, okay, in your, to the next PNP meeting? Policy and priorities. Okay, so duly moved and supported. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Oh, Mayor, did we have a seconder?
Yes, it was Councillor Altenhoff.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Councilor Altenhoff.
Okay. Council meeting cancellation Tuesday, August 10th. I certainly brought this forward and I think it's, we haven't had much of a break in the last 18 months. We had the flooding all last summer and administration has been working diligently for the last 18 months. And I think, we all deserve a little bit of second win. And I think this would make sense for us to reconvene. Well, we have one more meeting in July and reconvene the first part of September. Councillor Altenhoff. Move. Supported Councillor Houston. All in favor? Was if any, that's unanimous. All right, I think we're at the confirmatory bylaw. If there's nothing further, 3 readings to confirm the proceedings. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Any notices of motion, members of council? Hearing none, our next meeting will be July 27th, 6:30. We have a public council meeting, ZBA at 5648 North Talbot Road, and 7 o'clock will be a regular council meeting. No further business. Adjournment is now in order. Councillor Tonio, supported by Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right, with that, members of council, our evening's work is done. And certainly I again, wish a good evening to all of you and certainly those who are streaming from home, and stay safe and looking forward to Friday, stage 3. We're moving up and until we meet again on July 27th, good night.